You're listening to the Chad Hasty Show on demand. Good for you. Now download the KFYO app and listen live weekday afternoons 5 to 7 p.m. Central.
Broadcasting from the great state of Texas, this is the Chad Hasty Show. News and views with a Lone Star perspective. You can sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Or call in at 1-800-687-0790. Now, here's Chad Hasty.
Good evening, Lubbock, Amarillo, Abilene, Wichita Falls, Midland, Odessa, Dallas, Fort Worth, down in Houston, over in El Paso, and anywhere else, inside or outside the great state of Texas, wherever you may be listening on this Thursday. Welcome in to the Chad Hasty Show. Glad to have you with us today. This beautiful Thursday as we are coasting now towards the end of the week. So much to talk about today here on the program, including taking a look back on Pearl Harbor. Today, 82 years ago today, the attack on Pearl Harbor. And today, Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. Of course, we'll get to a couple stories that are out there about Pearl Harbor. There are some. It does seem like every year there's fewer and fewer stories. Even took the U.S. Navy a while today to post on social media about Pearl Harbor and Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. So we will remember. We'll take a look at Pearl Harbor, and if you've ever been to Pearl Harbor, if you've ever gone to the site, would like to hear from you today, what you took away from that visit. And I've been there once, had the pleasure of going, and it's something that when we were planning our trip to Hawaii a couple of years ago, we wanted to make sure that we had enough time, hadn't spent time at Pearl Harbor. And when we were planning our trip, I had joined some of these Facebook groups that were all about traveling to Hawaii and what was going to be, because this was during COVID, and so we wanted to see what was going to be open, what was not going to be open, and at that time it was even a question whether we would make it there because of flights and some people urging travel not to Hawaii, and it was just it was a headache just leading up to going to Hawaii. Once you got there, it was fantastic. But it was, but I'm still part of some of those groups, and I see people ask the question, is it worth it? Is it worth it? Should we take time? Should we take an hour? Which you should spend more time. You can spend a lot of time at Pearl Harbor. But I see the question that pops up all the time from people, should we spend a day? Should we really spend time at Pearl Harbor? Is there really anything for people to see? Is there anything for people to do? And it's weird. It's weird seeing that question. And the answer is yes, you should go if you're able to. You should absolutely go to Pearl Harbor and take it all in. And there's a lot to take in when you go to Pearl Harbor, and you go and you are there, and you see still see the oil coming up, and it's just, boy, it is a somber place to be, and it hits you when you're out there. It really does. So we'll talk about Pearl Harbor today on the program. Your phone calls, your text messages throughout the show today. There was a debate last night. How many of you watched it? Be honest. Come on, did you watch the debate? I actually did watch part of the debate last night, and I got to say, it was probably the best debate that we've had. I think I was right in that the moderators were fantastic, the best group of moderators and questions that we had. The candidates were ready to fight each other, which is no surprise at all. The moderators actually were more in control of last night's debates than previous moderators, and there were really no gotcha lefty liberal questions from liberal moderators. These were all very good questions that were asked, and even some pointed questions, but they all received pointed questions, which was good. And so it was quite a debate last night. It's not going to matter. Not going to matter at all. It's not going to have any real impact on the race, but we'll get into some of the highs and lows in last night's debate. And if you watched the debate, would love to know your thoughts on what you saw, what you heard in the debate last night on News Nation, which I did. I got onto my YouTube TV to see if I had the CW, and I did not, but I did have a News Nation channel, which I did not know was on YouTube TV. So I got to watch, and so I was pretty happy about that. 806-680-2790. That's how you text in to the program today. You can text in at 806-680-2790. When you do text in, let us know who you are, where you're listening from. That way we can give you a proper shout-out. When you call in, you can do that at 1-800-687-0790. That's 1-800-687-0790. One of the first texts of the day, I talked about December 7th and all my classes today. In one class, not a single student knew the significance of December 7th, 1941. My goodness. If you don't mind me asking, what grade level were these students? What grade level were these students? It's something that I'm not surprised, I guess. I think it's sad. But you go back now and you see students who are obviously very young, and they're in school, whether it's junior high or high school, and they're not very familiar with September 11th. And from what I've heard in the textbooks about 9/11, that section's getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller each year. Each time they come out with a new textbook, the section on 9/11 gets a little bit smaller. So I can only imagine the section on Pearl Harbor and how small that section really is. And then that's what, sadly, that is what happens with history. And people forget history. We forget our own history. It's a very dangerous thing to do. We should learn from our history. We should continue to learn from our history. Even as we get older, we should continue to learn from our history. We should keep the knowledge out there for the younger generations. And that's one thing that we do here on the program. And I think that's why going to different battle sites, going to sites where wars were fought, where battles were fought, it's such a smart thing to do, because it does keep that history alive. I'm a big fan of history, and that's something that you don't have, I think, a lot of with people, is that if they're not a fan of history, if they don't like history, if they don't understand how history applies to today, then they are going to forget about Pearl Harbor. They're going to forget about 9/11. They're going to forget about things that have happened. Wow, 11th and 12th, they should know. You're right. Juniors and seniors, they should know. I was hoping you were going to say 5th or 6th graders. I got to be honest with you. I was hoping you were going to say 5th or 6th graders, and I would have said, well, you got to be a little easy on it. They may not know in 5th or 6th. Yeah, 11th and 12th graders should absolutely know. But here's the deal. I wonder how many of their parents realized, oh, wait, today is December 7th. Wait, today is Pearl Harbor Day. Again, it took hours and hours and hours. In fact, the X account, the Twitter/X account for the USS Arizona had to tweet out that the U.S. Navy had not acknowledged December 7th yet, and they said, I hope they haven't forgotten. Oh, no. And then an hour later, the U.S. Navy sent out a remembrance. So again, how many adults did not recognize today's date when they went throughout their day? Again, it's not going to be on the top of mind of everybody. It's not going to be on the top. You should know exactly what December 7th is when someone mentions, hey, do you know what today is? Oh, yeah. But again, for a lot of people, it's not on the top of everybody's mind, and it's not going to be something that in a time where so many people are busy and they've got so many things going on. I'm not going to blame somebody for not instantly recognizing what today was. Now, if you're with the U.S. Navy, if you're with the U.S. military, you should probably instantly know. But you should at least know what December 7th was, and the like you said, the history behind today's date, and what the significance of December 7th is. But good for you for mentioning it. You taught them something. So God bless you. You taught them something, and that is important. 806-680-2790. Maybe some of them will go home and look up more about Pearl Harbor and World War II, and maybe they'll look some more things up about all of that. Maybe at least one or two of them will do that. And if they did, then you did something really good today. 806-680-2790. 1-800-687-0790. Chad Hasty Show. We'll be right back.
The Chad Hasty Show can be heard all over West Texas, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Tune in on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO in Lubbock, News Talk 940 in Amarillo, News Talk 94.7 and 1470 KYYW in Abilene, and in Wichita Falls on News Talk 96.3 and 1290. The Chad Hasty Show. Make it a part of your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
I'm Ryan Seacrest. First responders are people who stand for a greater purpose. They will be there for you when nobody else is, to help you, your family, your community. This is their selfless promise. This is their sworn duty, to protect, to serve, to help. When you call 911, first responders show up now. Let's show up for the people who show up for us every day and every night.
Go to firstrcf.org and make a difference today.
When you have your workers' comp...
A morning lineup. Sunrise LBK at 6 and Michael Berry at 8:30. News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO.
I want a hippopotamus for Christmas. Only a hippopotamus.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Appreciate you being out there. Oh, by the way, coming up a little bit later on, we've got McKenzie DiLullo with the Texan News who will join us at 5:35. At 6, right around 6, we're going to get to a story out of Abilene where some ACU students are very offended by a program that happened at Abilene Christian University. They're very upset about it, that their lifestyle wasn't embraced. So we'll get to that coming up. And right around 6 o'clock, it's a pretty interesting story. Some text messages coming in. Our history is no longer taught. Students are not educated. They're indoctrinated. It's being erased on purpose. Very sad. That from Linda in Lubbock. You know, and what's sad about this is that so many people are just fine with history being erased. Think about all the statues that have been torn down because, we're offended by statues. We're offended by names of bases. We're offended by this. We're offended by that. So we've got to tear down history. Whether you like it or not, it is our history. And in the United States, we are okay with just tearing things down. We're okay with tearing down once a building gets, 30 years old, tear it down and build a new one. We're okay tearing down our history, whether it's a building, whether it's a stadium, whether it's a statue, whether it's if it offends one group, then we definitely have to tear it down. It's extra saying that if you look at calendars these days, a lot of them don't have Pearl Harbor Day noted. That's disappointing. Hang on. Let me see here. Let me look at my phone calendar and see if it's on my phone calendar. No. No, not on my phone calendar. I didn't think it would be. I just wanted to double check. Again, when you have a nation that is okay, and so many people in our country who are okay with tearing down our history, sadly, it shouldn't surprise people when we forget about it, when maybe history is not taught as much in school. And, of course, in school these days, it's all about teaching towards the test. Is Pearl Harbor going to be on the test that kids ultimately have to take? No. Is it on the STAR test? Probably not. It's probably not anything about Pearl Harbor on the STAR test. I don't know. But I would assume that there's nothing about Pearl Harbor there. So if Pearl Harbor's not on the STAR test, then we don't need to teach it. Now, if they could go back and find like a LGBTQ figure at Pearl Harbor, then maybe they would. Maybe they would include that in the textbooks. Maybe they would. Maybe that would be something that they would bring up in the schools. But again, we do live in a nation that is very casual about our history. Doesn't mean everybody. I'm just saying society overall, very casual about our history. Even with 9/11. For the first few years after 9/11, they would replay the coverage from that day. And then it got to, this is too depressing, we can't do it. But they would still air on Fox and CBS, ABC, NBC. They would air the reading of names from Ground Zero. Well, that continued on for a few more years. And then that was a bit too much. Time to wrap it up. We don't want to expose everybody to this. This is sad. This isn't fun programming. We could be airing The View right now. And so that went away. And then I've got the story in front of me. It's a great story from Fox News. World War II veteran, 103 years old, returning to Pearl Harbor, 82 years after Japan's attack, to honor fallen soldiers. Stories about a World War II veteran who survived Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor, returning to Hawaii, traveling to Honolulu to commemorate the 82nd anniversary of the attack. Ira Ike Schaub, 103, was 21 years old when Japanese pilots bombed the Navy base on December 7th, 1941. Upon his arrival in Hawaii earlier this week, he was met with applause from those who welcomed him to the island following his flight from Portland. More than 8 decades after the attack, folks, there are not many of these people still alive. These heroes, these folks who survived this attack, the folks who fought in World War II. It's very sad. There are not many of them left. More than 8 decades after the attack, Schaub still recalls the memories, some of which he said are not best to maintain. He said, quote, "They're not necessarily pleasant," he recalled, according to Hawaii News Now, "but I definitely don't want to lose that memory." God bless him. Story's over at Fox News if you want to read it. But even on the Fox News page, they've got a video on there from 2 years ago when Fox was out at Pearl Harbor. Yeah, the number one, the video that they put with it, remembering Pearl Harbor 80 years later. There is a lesson to learn. A texter saying there's always a lesson. There's a lesson as always in Pearl. We became complacent, idle hands, and a free people, or devil's workshop. We're supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave. When we come back, we'll visit with McKenzie DiLullo with the Texan News. We'll also continue to take your phone calls, your texts on Pearl Harbor. On Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. And then we'll get to the ACU story coming up at 6:05. You won't want to miss that one.
The Chad Hasty Show, weekdays 5 to 7 p.m. Sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790.
Diane from Michigan, a disabled senior citizen trying to get by. Henry from Florida, a veteran fighting to make ends meet. Elena from Arizona, a mother struggling to feed her daughter. Hi, I'm Connie Britton, and I support Feeding America because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year, like Diane, Henry, and Elena. Learn more at feedingamerica.org. Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
I answered the call. Together, we fought for our nation and its people. And even though I no longer wear the uniform, I am still a Marine. My service has come full circle. I will continue to support my country and my community. Then and now, Semper Fidelis remains my promise. Always faithful, always Marine.
DX Trailer Sales.
Texas, News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO. You're listening to The Chad Hasty Show.
All right, welcome back. Chad Hasty Show, 1-800-687-0790. Text in 806-680-2790. Joining us on the phones right now from our friends over at the Texan News, the senior editor of the Texan, McKenzie DiLullo, joins us once again here on the Chad Hasty Show. McKenzie, welcome back. How are you today?
I'm well, Chad. How are you?
Doing great. Appreciate you taking some time today. We've got quite a few stories over at the Texan. You're covering just so many different stories out there. Let's start off with Tesla, as they are wanting to do something pretty big on top of their roof.
Yes, so if you didn't think the Gigafactory was already a big deal here in Austin, there's some news regarding this. So Elon Musk continues to make waves, obviously, moving all of his operations, or most of his operations, to Texas, specifically Austin, in 2021. And now his Gigafactory, the Tesla factory here in Austin, announced it will be moving forward with what it's calling the largest rooftop solar installation in the world. Now, obviously, Musk has had an interest in green energy. It's very well documented. In 2016, Tesla acquired Solar City, a residential and commercial solar provider, for $2.6 billion. Tesla's whole motto is also just very simpatico with this aim. This Gigafactory first opened in April of 2022, and Musk presented his plans there to begin the production of the electric vehicle pickup Cybertruck that we hear so much about on the news these days. And he has posted on social media that the Gigafactory would be a $10 billion investment and create 20,000 jobs directly within the factory and 100,000 jobs indirectly. Notably, there were some tax breaks involved in this. Del Valley Independent School District offered Tesla $46 million in property tax breaks over the next 10 years, and the Travis County Commissioner's Court offered an additional $14 million in tax breaks during that same timeline. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that and what the cost of this solar installation might mean for taxpayers. Notably as well, Musk has also requested almost $100 million in U.S. government funding to construct and connect a network of 9 charging stations that will run from Texas to California for electric semi-trucks, so entering the trucking industry as well. So we'll certainly keep an eye on what this means for taxpayers, but innovation all over the place for Musk.
Yeah, absolutely. Another big story that came out today dealing with abortion.
Yes, so Judge Maya Gamble of a district court granted a temporary restraining order, a TRO, against the state from enforcing its pro-life laws against a woman who requested an urgent abortion due to medical issues with her pregnancy. The filing from her team says Katie Cox needs an abortion and she needs it now. The Center for Reproductive Rights said that she had experienced severe cramping prior to the confirmation that her baby may not survive to birth, and if it does, her baby would be stillborn or survive for only minutes, hours, or days. The state argued that the lawsuit did not provide evidence that her doctor sought a second opinion during her evaluation, and that to seek a temporary restraining order in this case would be improper. Ultimately, the judge granted the TRO, which caused an emotional reaction from the woman and her husband. Now, very notable as well that laws such as Senate Bill 8, or what we know as the Texas Heartbeat Act, and the trigger ban here in Texas will now be unable to be enforced against Cox. Texas Right to Life had some strong words. They said the answer is not to end the child's life because of the baby's disability, but state law does anticipate the serious risk to the mother. Under the Heartbeat Act that is in law, that's at the crux of this whole argument, doctors are not to be civilly liable for performing an abortion if the physician believes a medical emergency exists that prevents compliance to the law, which the physician must then notate in the patient record. So why there's a lawsuit for this in the first place is fascinating, but we'll certainly keep an eye on this as time goes on.
Yeah, and then another story over at the Texan.news having to deal with this suspect who is suspected of committing 6 murders.
Yes, huge news here in Central Austin. A 34-year-old male accused of capital murder in the deaths of 6 people in Travis and Bexar counties just a couple of days ago was previously released on bond paid by an interest group that favors much more lax bond policies. It's called the Texas Organizing Project, and it bailed Shane James out of jail in 2022 after he was arrested on misdemeanor family violence charges. The Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar told the public that the district attorney's office is working to create, quote, the best case possible before we go to the magistrate to make sure that the suspect is not released on bond again, and explained that he was released from jail on March 7th, 2022, and then cut off his ankle monitor. He noted that cutting off an ankle monitor was not yet a criminal offense. Lawmakers enacted a law earlier this year making it a felony to cut off an ankle monitor, so that's a new law that would have affected this case. Salazar described an encounter with the suspect via a mental health call in which they discovered that he had active warrants on the misdemeanor charges due to that ankle monitor removal, but that the options were limited due to the fact that police can take fewer actions on misdemeanor warrants as opposed to felonies. But the sheriff suggested that he wished officers could have done more. Local officials were asked if they regretted accepting campaign donations from the Texas Organizing Project, this group that bailed the suspect out. There were denials of taking money for the group, but there were certainly some in-kind donations that were given to some local officials. Governor Greg Abbott published a statement on Wednesday condemning the attacks and suggesting the perpetrators should be imprisoned for life. Said Texans grieve the loved ones of the 6 Texans who were murdered by a hardened criminal who must never see the light of day again. The murderer also shot 2 law enforcement officers in the line of duty from the governor. So we'll certainly keep an eye on this. Other public officials commented on the killings as an example of why Texas needs to adopt the public policies addressing gun violence. Very different approaches to this act of violence, but regardless, a very difficult day Tuesday for a lot of those in Central Austin.
Yeah, very interesting, sad news. But you see some of the politics and interest groups that are involved in this, and I think more questions will probably be asked in the future of some of these politicians who took money or, like you said, in-kind donations from these organizations.
Absolutely, and I think that's where criminal justice obviously largely can be a bipartisan issue where folks on both sides of the aisle can come to an agreement. There recently, in the recent years, has been an influx of more progressive policies that has caused a little bit of dissension among those who are pro-criminal justice reform and not as much agreement on some of these more lax bail policies, bond policies. So. Yeah. Certainly something to continue to watch, and the legislature is very much on top of this as well. All right. McKenzie, what else can people find over at the Texan.news? One of our popular stories this week, Texas is suing the Biden administration for using tool of warfare to censor Daily Wire, the Federalist, top conservative media organizations nationally. Also, a historic church built by former slaves gets city permit approval after more than 2 years. That one's also very popular at the Texan.news.
All right, very good. As always, appreciate your time, McKenzie. We'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. That's McKenzie DiLullo with the Texan News. We'll be right back.
A tornado is on the ground. You're at work, your spouse is at a meeting, the kids are at 3 different schools, power and cell are out, and your home is inaccessible. Now what? Have a preset meetup plan. Share it with everyone in your family and practice it. Know the emergency plans at work and school, too. Get ahead of what's ahead. Be informed, make a plan, build a kit. #TexasReady. Go to txready.org for more information.
Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. Can always find people who are helping. Thank you to all the first responders who put their lives in danger to help us when my brothers and sisters need them. We look out for the helpers because they look out for us. Thank you, first responders! Thank you, first responders!
Help us help first responders in your community today. Go to firstrcf.org to learn more.
Master license number 123.
All right, welcome back to the Chad HD Show. Some text messages that have come in. Let's see here. You can text in on any of the topics that we've been getting into today. One texter, when I was a child in the early 1960s, three major networks all broadcast the Wreath Lane Live. That from a texter talking about Pearl Harbor. Hey, Chad, Bill from North Carolina. I don't know when the Alamo was, but do remember the phrase, remember the Alamo. Another texter, Mary in Lubbock. I was born 2 days after Pearl Harbor was bombed. My mom and dad were in the hospital in Oklahoma City. My dad bought a radio to keep alert while Mom was in labor, as I was born on December 9th, 1941. Well, happy early birthday. See, Lee again, I have 2 great uncles buried with the Arizona. It is quite something going to the Arizona, and you're standing there and on the ferry ride, boat ride, whatever it's called. I mean, everyone's kind of talking because you're going somewhere, right? You're getting on the little boat and you're going somewhere, and everyone's kind of talking and looking around, and then it's odd once you step foot onto that memorial, and really as you get closer to it, people start to quiet down a little bit, and you can tell they're starting to take it all in. And then once they're on the memorial, at least when it was my experience, everyone was just very, very quiet. It's very somber. People walking around, obviously taking pictures, and I took many pictures. But everyone is looking at the oil that is coming up, but it's a very somber thing, and to remember that you are standing where so many young people lost their lives, and where remains are still being found. It's a very somber experience, but it's one that if you ever have the opportunity to go and you're trying to fit in, and I get it, it's one of those, not everyone can go to Hawaii every couple of years. It is an expensive trip. But if you can fit it in, if you can go to Hawaii, and you have the question or the questions asked, should we go to Pearl Harbor? Should we take a couple hours? The answer is yes. You should. You should absolutely go to Pearl Harbor if you ever have the opportunity to do so. Some more text messages coming in. Don't know if we can remain a free country and a democracy if we're ignorant of history. It's the Democrats' plan to erase history. Another texter. In college, I had a biology teaching assistant from Japan. Always made sure to wear my Pearl Harbor shirt on December 7th. Let's see. Robert in Oklahoma weighing in. Can't remember who said the wonderful line, a nation that forgets its history, bound to repeat it, but I'm afraid Civil War is something that people don't even realize what it was, and it's almost that time again. Also said, am I being naive, or is it just silly to think that when they established the ankle monitor system, that taking it off would be against the law kind of automatically? The idea that they had to pass a separate law making it a crime makes no sense at all. Well, remember, you're talking about government. You are talking about government here. So, in a way, it makes a little bit of sense that they got to cover all their bases. Let's go back to the phones, and Linda in Lubbock. Good evening, Linda.
Hey, how are you?
Doing wonderful. How are you today?
I'm going to make this really fast because Nick said to make it fast.
Okay.
I have a cousin that went down with the Oklahoma at Pearl Harbor. He's never been recovered. And I was, in 2013, I was able to go to New York City. Never been there in my life. We went up to the pool where the memorial is, and you were talking about quietness. We're in line. There's tons of people.
Yeah.
And we're on a sidewalk going up to the pool, and everybody's talking. And when we crested the top of that sidewalk where the pool was, total silence. You couldn't even hear people breathing. I mean, it was like it was amazing. And my goal was to find Todd Beamer, his name. and I went around 3 of the sides until I found his name, and I prayed over him.
Yeah.
And they were giving out white roses. Each name has a little hole where you can put a flower. And so I got a white rose for him and placed it there. But it was bone chilling. It really was. It was amazing.
Yeah. Wow.
And I just had to share that because I've had many members of my family go to Pearl Harbor, and they say the same thing. You're chattering, and then when you get out of that boat at the memorial, nobody's breathing. I mean, it's just so quiet.
Yeah, it's just there's this, and it's like you brought up with Ground Zero, and it is, and I'm sure it's like this at other memorials around the country where you're getting to a point, and then something happens. And it happens to everybody where something clicks, and you're like, "Whoa, wait a minute," and everything just goes quiet.
My dad was in World War II. My uncle was in World War II. He was a crew chief on a B-17. So I've always been in that world of history. Of course, I love history. I love any kind of history. Mm-hmm. But, when you were saying memorial, the Tomb of the Unknown is the same way.
Yes.
At Arlington. Nobody is talking. I mean, it's total silence. And when he clicks his heels, it echoes down through the cemetery. You can hear it echo all the way to the Potomac.
Yeah.
That little click. I mean, it's bone chilling. It's incredible.
Absolutely.
Anyway, I just want to share.
Linda, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening. Appreciate you being out there. When we come back, got a story out of Abilene to get into. Students very upset over at ACU. We'll be right back.
The Chad Hasty Show, a presentation of the Texas Town Square Media Network. The views and opinions expressed during the Chad Hasty Show are not necessarily the views of this station staff, management, advertisers, or Town Square Media. Drive home with Chad Hasty. Broadcasting from the great state of Texas, this is The Chad Hasty Show. News and views with a Lone Star perspective. You can sound off during the show by sending Chad a text at 806-680-2790. That's 806-680-2790. Or call in at 1-800-687-0790. Now, here's Chad Hasty.
Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Appreciate you being out there. You can text in at any time, 806-680-2790. It's 806-680-2790. You can call in at 1-800-687-0790. And yes, you can follow along on social media at Chad HD Radio on the X. You can also download the Chad HD Show podcast, available anywhere you get your podcast from, and the Current in Cask podcast as well that I do with Matt Martin, where we talk current events and also review whiskey. It's delicious. You can find that at Current in Cask anywhere you get podcasts. Let's see, we have some texters still weighing in on different memorials, and of course today, Pearl Harbor Remembrance Day. And we've been talking about those who have either been to Pearl Harbor or have had family members go to Pearl Harbor. We had Linda who called in, talked about how she had family members who had been to Pearl Harbor. She herself had been to Ground Zero, and that feeling that you get when you get close to a memorial, when where one of these big memorials that are out there, whether it's where people are have died, or it's a memorial. One texter bringing up the Vietnam Memorial Wall said that the feeling is like that at the Vietnam Memorial Wall. It may just be a wall, but you're not the same when you leave there. And that is another location. There's a lot of things I can say about Washington, D.C. that are not favorable. But you go to some of these memorials, you go to some of these sites in Washington, and you know, you're right. You do get that same sense. And if you haven't been at night to some of the memorials, go at night, because I think it gives you even a different feeling than going during the day. You can send in your thoughts on the text line 806-680-2790. Let's see, another text coming in. This one, on the app chat coming in from Eric. Was able to visit Pearl Harbor a few years ago, and you're right, it does stick with you. And it is something that it's not something that I had really done a lot of study on. Obviously, I knew the history of Pearl Harbor, but after I left, I did a lot more studying on Pearl Harbor in World War II. Was so glad to have visited. It's great. It's fantastic. Story out of a Big Country homepage. The president of Abilene Christian University promising a safe environment over at ACU. Abilene Christian University hosted a series of speakers during its Holy Sexuality Week last month, aiming to root around the spiritual aspects of sexuality. However, the event has faced criticism from students who felt the focus heavily leaned towards LGBTQ and queer lifestyles and lacked diverse perspectives. Since then, reports of bullying has led to a group in support of on-campus inclusion for all to address the university's president. ACU freshman Brinkley Zielinski, identifying as a bisexual Christian, told KTAB that she was ultimately disappointed in the series, saying the presentation seemed one-sided. No. Instead of fostering an expected open dialogue. You know, Brinkley, I would say this to you. You're a young college student. Life is going to be full of disappointments. And since you're attending a Christian university, you may find that things are a little bit one-sided from time to time. At Abilene Christian University, just as you may find that at, I don't know, a lot of churches, a lot of Christian churches who don't necessarily preach, hey, go out and do whatever you feel like doing. Do what you feel makes you feel good. Have you been to a church that talks about the gay lifestyle? Now, I know there are some churches, there are some that will embrace gay marriage and say that gay marriage is perfectly fine and there's no sinning or anything there, and that there's nothing wrong with the homosexual lifestyle when it comes to Christianity. There are some churches that will say that. That is not the majority of churches. Now, the majority of churches will also say that we are all sinners, but they don't embrace the gay lifestyle. And if you're attending Abilene Christian University, maybe you should realize that they're going to go with, at least in theory, they're going to go with the Christian lifestyle and teachings. She's a young student. Maybe she doesn't know. Zelensky commented, Holy Sexuality Week was framed as a conversation, even though they did not have any opposing views. They had one view that you're supposed to follow. Yes. Again, have you been to church lately? You don't. There is the what is that view? What is that view? What is that book called? The Bible. Yes. I forgot about that. Speakers at ACU's Holy Sexuality Week in November range from spiritual leaders to self-professed former homosexuals. They shared varied opinions, including one which stated homosexuality is the opposite of holiness. In response, a support group, named Wildcats for Inclusion, emerged, revealing concern about potential for unhealthy or hostile campus environment. Reports of anti-gay rhetoric then reportedly circulated on campus, reportedly. Amazing how that's never happened before. There were no reports prior to that of anti-gay rhetoric, but then all of a sudden, once this new Wildcats for Inclusion group formed, well, then all of a sudden people were talking about anti-gay stuff on the ACU campus. Amazing how that happens. The university president, Dr. Phil Schubert, reassured the community, affirming a zero-tolerance policy against bullying. We remain steadfast and completely committed to ensuring that ACU is a safe environment where everyone is accepted. Nevertheless, concerns continued among groups like Wildcats for Inclusion and ACU alumni. Paul Anthony, alum and WFI member, explained his work. Why don't they have anyone who's opposed to the WFI? Why don't they have anyone else being interviewed who went to the Holy Sexuality Week and had no problem with what was being taught? Wildcats for Inclusion submitted an open letter to the president urging improved inclusion for queer identifying students. Maybe you need to go to a different school. I don't know. If you feel that bad at Abilene Christian University, you may want to go to a different school. During Holy Sexuality Week, my friends and I felt targeted. I was harassed online by a fellow student. Oh, online. So it didn't happen at campus. It didn't happen as you were passing by someone. It happened, allegedly, online. Well, no one has ever been harassed online. That never happens. Online communities are like the nicest, safest places to go to. Everybody knows that. I was told to get off our campus. Made me feel like I didn't belong to ACU at all. If you don't like what's being taught at the university, if you don't like what's happening, you don't have to be there. You can go. We have freedom here in the United States. You can go to a university. There are many universities that do not have, what is it called? Holy Sexuality Week. A lot of universities don't have that. So you could find a university that doesn't have that. That would probably be just fine with whatever lifestyle you would want to live. In fact, most universities around the United States are just fine with whatever lifestyle. In fact, there are many that foster different lifestyles like that. They embrace lifestyles. They have entire departments that are pro different lifestyles. The students, the open letter continued. It was hurtful to feel like an outcast in a place that I've been trying so hard to fit in and make new friends. HSW brought back all those feelings of self-doubt, shame, and separation. In the past, I fought hard to overcome those feelings and was able to form a strong, intimate relationship with Jesus, which has gotten me through some very tough times. Now, again, I'm not going to get into the Christian arguments here, but I feel as though the students who are complaining about this, that they don't understand where they're going to school, and they would be much happier at a different school that did not have the rigid Christianity, quote unquote, that they were subjected to during 1 week in November. 1 week in November. And maybe not even the entire week, maybe just a day they were subjected to it. I don't even know if they were forced to go and listen to these speakers. I have no idea. It doesn't say that. ACU's Board of Trustees plans to convene in January to discuss the university's sexual stewardship policy moving forward, signaling a proactive step to address the concerns. Who says it's proactive? Why should ACU change for a handful of students who don't like what ACU is trying to promote? It doesn't sound like to me ACU is the problem. It sounds like you have a bunch of students who they want to live their lifestyle. They want to live the way they want to, and everyone else has to change. Doesn't that sound familiar? Doesn't that sound like so many groups that we have around the United States? Hey, we don't want to change. We don't think we should change. We don't think we should be silent. You are the ones who need to change. Everyone else needs to change and accept what we say. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to hear it. You're not forcing us to change. ACU isn't coming out, I don't believe. I don't see this anywhere where ACU is coming out and saying you can't be gay and attend ACU. ACU has not come out and said that if you're gay and you attend ACU, that you have to flip and become straight. They're not saying that. They had what amounts to maybe a Bible study. And there are a handful of students don't like it, and now the ACU Board of Trustees are going to convene in January to discuss the sexual stewardship policy moving forward. And as Big Country Homepage puts it, signaling a proactive step to address these concerns. Why? Why do they need to change? If the students don't like it, take your money, or mommy and daddy's money, and go somewhere else. But we come across this even in some churches. I don't like what's being preached. We got to change it. I feel triggered. We got to change it. I don't like what the Bible says. We've got to change it. We can't teach that. We can't teach that part. It'll offend too many people. So, preacher man, don't ever talk about that. 806-680-2790, 1-800-687-0790. When we come back, your phone calls, your text, and more.
There's something happening here. What it is.
The Chad Hasty Show can be heard all over West Texas, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Tune in on News Talk 95.1 and 790 KFYO in Lubbock, News Talk 940 in Amarillo, News Talk 94.7 and 1470 KYYW in Abilene, and in Wichita Falls on News Talk 96.3 and 1290. The Chad Hasty Show. Make it a part of your drive home, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m.
This message is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. Veterans, have you downloaded the VA Health and Benefits mobile app? It makes it easy to manage your health care and benefits. In a newer feature, the app lets you review your VA prescriptions. Download the app on your iPhone or the Google App Store, or wherever you get your mobile apps. That's the VA Health and Benefits mobile app.
Worship at Southside Church of Christ.
Or investments. Listen to Fayback
95.1 and 790 KFYO. Chad Hasty, talking the news at the start, middle, and end of your drive home and when news breaks. This is the Chad Hasty Show.
Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. Let's see some text messages that have come in regarding memorials. One of the best yet, often overlooked, is the Vicksburg National Cemetery in Vicksburg, Mississippi. Let's see. Chad, if you see the memorials in D.C. at night, what are the chances of being robbed? Good show, Chad. You know, let me tell you something. That's not out of your mind when you're going around. Now, we did a nighttime tour, so we were able to get on and off of buses and everything else. So it's that is something that you do think about. Who knows? In D.C., somebody may carjack the bus driver at some point. Another texture, the handful of students clearly misunderstood. They thought it was Holy Sexuality Week. Another text, Rob and Abilene. Unfortunately, ACU is partially woke, so I'm not surprised they got themselves in this pickle. They don't follow the true Church of Christ values anymore. Another texter, aren't these Christian colleges in Texas private? Doesn't that mean the college could ask these students to leave? Tell them to go somewhere else. Market, California. FYI, my daughter graduated from LCU. Well, listen, even if this was a public university, they could tell the students to take a hike if they really wanted to. They could tell the students. Now, if they were at UT, the students would be celebrated and applauded and everything else. Sounds like maybe they are over at ACU as well. I just think that, again, you supposedly knew what you were getting yourself into by going to ACU. You should not be shocked if they are teaching things that would align with the Bible and align with Christianity. What's going to happen next? You know, you have during Holy Sexuality Week, you know, fellas, once you get married, you really shouldn't cheat on your wife. Whoa. Wait a minute. We really enjoy cheating on our wives, yet we still have a strong relationship with Jesus. So I feel condemned here. This isn't right. This is terrible. ACU should really change their policy on cheating on your wives. They had a speaker that said, don't do that. Well, the next year, you know, folks, you really shouldn't. It's a biblical teaching. It's something you shouldn't. You shouldn't murder anyone. Wait a minute. I really like murdering people. You're telling me, and I think I've got a pretty strong relationship here with Jesus. You're telling me at ACU that I can't go around murdering people. Well, I think you've got to change because that's really limiting what I can do. I feel judged. I feel really judged by that. It's terrible. Elizabeth in Lubbock. Great show, Chad. Thank you, Elizabeth. I think one of the troubles that churches have in some parts of the country is they're competing against all other kinds of, quote, entertainment available on the weekend. Some churches will do anything to keep their membership from dwindling to nothing. So in doing so, they have, in my opinion, sold out to the seductress of the feel-good sermons that lack scriptural substance. It sets up a deadly, slippery slope. People who think they are Christians and think they are learning about their faith when they're actually being sold bill of goods. Often they are giving enormous amounts of money to support these charlatan churches. It's a shame. I hope the pendulum swings back soon. We're going to need a populace that is wearing their full suits of spiritual armor. Great text there, Elizabeth. You get what I'm saying. I think that, just like we have problems in our homes across the United States. We have problems in our, with mom and dad not being at home, mom and dad not being available. By the way, one party says that's absolutely fine. We don't need fathers in the homes. We don't need strong father-like figures. It's amazing, right? This all kind of goes back to one party. Very interesting how that happens. You don't need God. You don't need to listen to anyone disagree with you. You don't need to be offended by anyone. You certainly don't need a strong father-like figure in the home. Just rely on the government and everything will be okay. And do what you feel like. Do what you feel. Do what feels good, and everything will be okay. The government will be here to fix you. And again, we wonder why we have so many problems in this nation. And it's not going to be easily fixed. It's not going to be able to be fixed just because we have a Republican president. It goes so much deeper than that. There's a lot of undoing that's going to happen. If we want to really get this country back on track, if you really want to get this country back to where it was, you're going to have to be ready to offend some people. People are going to have to accept that, guess what? Masculinity is okay. That having a strong male figure in a child's life is a good thing. That yes, there are some great, wonderful, God bless you, single mothers who are out there. But there also needs to be a strong male figure somewhere in that child's life. And that doesn't mean that all dads are great dads. They're not. But you watch TV these days, you watch movies these days, and you see just how many shows show the male as an incompetent buffoon who can't do anything right, who is often the butt of jokes, is not a strong male role model. You see that out of Hollywood. You see it all the time. In film, you see it all the time on TV. Kids watch that stuff. Kids pick up on that. And then you say you don't need a strong male role model in the home. It's not needed. And then when it comes to church, well, you don't have to listen to all the rules. You don't have to listen to all the commandments. You don't have to listen to everything that we are taught. You don't have to listen to the things that annoy you. You don't have to listen to the things that make you go, ouch. You know, how many of you have walked out of church on a Sunday, or if you watch online, how many of you walked out before going, ow, that was, it kind of hit me a little bit, man. Need to make a couple of changes. That's not a bad thing, by the way. It's not a bad thing when you leave and you're personally impacted and you feel something when you're walking out of the building and you go, ow, oh, man, that was a really good point. I don't know if it was aimed at me. Like, I don't know if someone told the preacher what was going on, but it kind of seemed like it was aimed at me, but I'm not sure he knows. But we have a bunch of younger people, and not just younger people, people my age, quite frankly, who go, no, I don't want to feel that way. I only want to feel good when I leave. Like Elizabeth said, it's just a form of entertainment. Entertain me for a little bit. Sing really well. I appreciate that. Thank you. Don't mention anything that I would feel personally condemned about. No. I don't want to hear that. No, thank you. If you'll just tell me everything will be okay, then I'll leave here feeling great. Folks, there are a lot of people living that life. A lot of people living that life, and they can't handle the real world. Can't handle the boss who is a boss. They can't handle it. Their kids can't handle it. And all this has been building and building and building and building over time. It ain't going to go away next year. No matter who's elected, it's not going to go away next year. In many cases, it may even get worse. Because to really impact some of this, to really change some of this, we're going to have uncomfortable conversations. We're going to have to maybe offend some people. And there are a lot of folks out there who they don't want to live that. They don't want to offend. They don't want to make anyone uneasy. They just don't want to be bothered with it. But they expect everything to change. 806-680-2790. 1-800-687-0790. When we come back, we'll begin to wrap things up. Your text messages, phone calls, and more.
Speeding tickets aren't cheap, and they can make your insurance rates go up too. So if you don't remember anything else from this commercial, remember this: slow down or pay up. Also, if law enforcement pulls you over for speeding, they'll check your license and registration. So be ready for that. Basically, if you ever wonder if speeding is worth it, the answer is pretty obvious. No way. Speeding is dangerous and expensive. So slow down or pay up. Be safe, drive smart. A message from TxDOT.
We live Texas. We breathe Texas. The landmarks, the swagger, and the lore make us who we are. We devour the tastes and the smells of our state. You just might say there's something in the air. So do your part to help protect it. Keep your tires at the correct pressure and avoid idling at drive-thrus. Both help reduce emissions. For tips, visit drivecleantexas.org. Drive clean, Texas. Live and breathe it. Brought to you by TxDOT.
News sponsored by The Knife Guy.
Afternoons at 4 on KFYO.
All right, welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show. We had a texter on the app chat asking about this story. Yes, James Tapley, an Irons Middle School teacher, was arrested on Thursday, charged with online solicitation of a minor and improper relationship between educator and student, said LISD. LISD police made first aware of an alleged inappropriate relationship between a middle school teacher and minor after receiving a notification from Lubbock Police Department on November 27th. Tapley was immediately placed on administrative leave awaiting further investigation. He's no longer employed by Lubbock ISD as the district has accepted his resignation. Tapley's bonds totaling $600,000. And parents at Irons Middle School were apparently notified. The communication sent to Irons Middle School families. Quote, we're writing to inform you of a deeply concerning incident involving a member of our faculty, James Tapley, a former teacher at Irons Middle School, was arrested by the Lubbock Police Department on charges related to online solicitation and improper relationship between an educator and a student. First and foremost, our priority remains safety and well-being of our students. Upon learning of the investigation, he was immediately placed on administrative leave on November 28th, pending the outcome of the legal process. And he goes on to say that we understand this news is upsetting, may raise questions and concerns. We encourage parents to have an open conversation with their child about internet safety and to report any concerns they may have about online interactions. Counseling services also available to any student or staff member who may need support. There are no words strong enough to express our deep disappointment and extreme outrage at this violation of professional and ethical conduct we expect our teachers, we expect of our teachers at times like these. The strength and unity of our community is more important than ever. We remain dedicated to providing a safe, supportive, nurturing, and learning environment for all students. So that was out of Lubbock this evening. 806-680-2790. The GOP debate, by the way, last night, we didn't really talk about it today. 4.1 million people watched, which, for News Nation, that's really good. It was a record night for News Nation, which drew 1.6 million viewers for the debate coverage, largest audience in history, according to Nielsen's early fast national numbers, although 2.5 million watched the simulcast on CW, giving it its most watched program since 2018. And the 25 to 54 demo, News Nation, drew more than 350,000 viewers, and the CW drew more than 500,000. That said, the debate audience was down from the last event in November, and continuing a trend since the first GOP gathering. Some 7.5 million watched the November 8th debate across NBC News, streaming, and digital platforms. That debate averaged 6.8 million viewers on NBC alone. So, let's see. Sean Hannity's town hall with Trump on Tuesday drew 3.2 million viewers. Hannity's debate last week between the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, California Governor Gavin Newsom, drew 4.75 million viewers and 5.46 million when a West Coast repeat was added. During the News Nation debate coverage Wednesday, Jesse Waters drew 2.43 million. Hannity brought in about 1.98 million. So for News Nation, it was good. For Ron DeSantis, I guess it was good. Maybe. Marion Crosbyton. Chad, I have found that at times I've left church not feeling good after a message that's a call for me to inspect my heart. Messages over the life have been more beneficial than the feel-good messages. God's children and meat, not sugar, need meat, not sugar all the time. Marion Crosbyton. Thank you, Mary. It's all right that you were a little bit late getting that in. We got it. It's all good. Folks, enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay safe, stay healthy. God bless you all. We'll be back here with you tomorrow, Friday, at 5 p.m.
The Chad Hasty Show, a presentation of the Texas Town Square Media Network. The views and opinions expressed during the Chad Hasty Show are not necessarily the views of this station staff, management, advertisers, or Town Square Media. Lubbock's most connected media